And I also just want to say that today's session will be mostly just like a little introduction to what SMART has to offer. This workshop today will be about an hour long. And I was thinking maybe about like half the time, I'm happy to review more of the science behind mind body medicine, what stress management and resiliency training is. And then at the second half, for folks who are interested, I'm happy to go over some really quick relaxation techniques if folks would like to learn that, just so you leave today with some elements of the course itself. So I guess I'll just kind of jump in to my background. So again, I'm Anna Shulman. I'm a licensed mental health counselor. I work currently full-time at New and Wellesley Hospital, part of the Mass General Brigham system. And my full-time job is pretty much being embedded in primary care as a clinician, meaning that I help patients with different types of health-related goals as they get referrals from primary care doctors. And that includes support with mild to moderate depression or anxiety, stress management, of course, insomnia support, support around diet or exercise goals. So wear a lot of hats. I've been doing that for about 5 years now. And in conjunction with my full-time work, I also do teach the stress management and resiliency training program independently. I am a SMART certified clinician from the Benson Henry Institute of Mind Body Medicine at Mass General. And this has been my passion project. And it's something that I dearly enjoy, and I love getting to know my classes as I do teach. And I'm happy to go over some more information about that towards the end. And with that said, this might be a good segue for me to share my presentation with you guys. And I also just want to thank that the reason why I am here today is that a past participant in one of my classes recently is highly involved in this organization, and she really enjoyed what we did and connected me with you. So I'm very grateful for the opportunities through my own classes. I really enjoy working with my participants, so just want to put that out there. So I'm going to share my screen just for folks to see if I can work on that for the presentation. I think I'm able to do it here. Here we go. Let's see if you guys can see it. All right, so I am sharing my screen here. I hope you guys can see it. At any point, if there's any technical difficulties, if you can't see something, if you can't hear me, feel free to message me. That tends to work out pretty well. So yeah, let's jump in. Excuse me. So I'm going to start the presentation here. So this is the mini stress management and resiliency training 101, just like a glimpse of what the SMART program is. I'll go into more detail as to what exactly it is traditionally just a moment. Before I get into what the SMART program is, I thought it would be a good idea to ask just kind of like a rhetorical question. Why is there like such a focus of mind body medicine? Why does mind body medicine exist? Why is it more popular in doctors' offices, medical schools, even I know in some magazines, I know for a lot of my own participants in my classes, my clients at work, they share with me that they see the word mindfulness and mind body medicine kind of like plastered quite often in like different magazines, news channels. I feel like these days a lot of folks slap on the term mindful to anything, which is really great. So, but why? You know, why is it more popular? Why is the term mindfulness and being mindful such a big deal? So I'm going to get to that right now. Just to kind of jump ahead of myself, being mindful, just to give you guys an idea for folks who might be new to it. I like to use this quote by a really famous physician who basically implemented medicine and mindfulness for them to be merged together to help folks with stress management and health issues that come from it. So he likes to categorize mindfulness as this. Mindfulness is paying attention to our lives moment by moment on purpose in a certain way and without judgment. That's by John Kabat-Zinn, who is a physician at the UMass Medical Center for Mindfulness. He's one of the forefathers as to why mindfulness is integrated in medicine. And it's pretty neat for folks who are originally from Massachusetts. I know this is the Massachusetts chapter. It's pretty cool to think that this idea of mindfulness in medicine was kind of homegrown. Back in the 70s, that's when he really started his work in implementing that I'll get to in just a moment. Before I go into the brief history of mind body medicine, just to give you guys an overview, when it comes to mindfulness with that quote, basically what that means, and I like to use it in my own terms sometimes, moment by moment, it just means being present. So when you think about it, if we were to boil down anxiety or different stressors, for a lot of folks, it's kind of like a two-sided coin, meaning half anxiety usually stems from fear of the unknown. And that kind of comes in the form of like those what if statements, like what if this is going to happen? What if that's going to happen? Etc. The opposite for some folks for anxiety is almost like regret and ruminating about the past. And that kind of looks more in the form of like these would have, could have, should have statements, like, oh, I really should have done this, or they could have done that, and I would have done this differently. And that's more of the rumination. So just to kind of summarize here, anxiety for a lot of people stem from ruminating about the past, or maybe ruminating about past events that were out of maybe someone's control, or the opposite, worry about the unknown in the future. So when we're present, when we're in the here and now, we tend to feel a little bit more relaxed and at ease because, again, you're not worrying about the future and you're not regretting about the past. So that's really what mindfulness is. When you are practicing being present in the moment, it helps you trigger your relaxation response, and in turn helps you not ruminate or worry about things that haven't happened yet. I'm not saying that all stress is bad. I know for some people, you can learn from the past, you can kind of make goals for the future, but it's really just about if you feel like those thoughts are happening to you too much to the point where they're not helpful anymore. Like if you feel like you're stuck in the past or stuck worrying about the future and it's not helpful or inspiring to you, that's where the mindfulness comes in to help you feel a little bit more even keel. So that's just my personal spin on it off of the quote that I just shared. So this is just a brief history of mind body medicine to continue on. Really been around for a long time. It's been around for approximately 2,500 years. As mentioned with John Kabat-Zinn, he is one of the forefathers of bringing mindfulness to medicine, and he founded this mindfulness-based stress management course in 1979 at UMass Medical Center. However, jump forward, maybe for some folks they're familiar with it. So John Kabat-Zinn's 8-week mindfulness-based class is known as MBSR, so mindfulness-based stress reduction, which is an 8-week course where you learn a bunch of different types of meditation techniques to better reduce stress. Jumping forward to what I'm involved in and what I do at the Benson Henry Institute of Mind Body Medicine at Mass General, they kind of took John Kabat-Zinn's program and made it a little bit more holistic and also more kind of health related. So, stress management and resiliency training was developed at Mass General at the Benson Henry Institute back in 2006. And what makes it different from John Kabat-Zinn courses is that for the SMART program, it includes a lot of other elements of health. So, not just meditation and stress management, but we also review how to challenge and reduce negative thoughts through cognitive behavioral therapy tips and tricks, talking about diet or exercise optimization. We also talk about what kind of creates this idea of resiliency, like humor, creativity. And also, we talk a little bit, we have a whole class dedicated to insomnia and sleep support as well. So it's a little bit more over encompassing when it comes to health, and that's what I am certified in. And basically, within the SMART program, when it comes to mind body medicine, for what I do, there's also a more heavy emphasis on participants in the class to have this cultivation of their own strengths and build awareness of their strengths to help them set goals and feel motivated and reduce stress. So it's very much strength based. A little more detail as to what stress management resiliency training is. So again, just as a refresher, it is an 8-week program for folks who like to reduce stress, enhance health and quality of life, and reduce negative thinking. Basically, people learn over time about how our thoughts, behaviors, and emotions, how they all interrelate with each other, which I'll show you guys a visual in a moment as well. You learn some tools. I know for a lot of folks, a lot of the people that I do teach tend to be 60 and up. I do offer within the last year, I've been offering the SMART program at different senior centers and independently. And it really helps folks kind of age with wisdom, without fear, with relaxation, health, humor. And with the pandemic, especially, it's been popular with my class and also the classes at Mass General, because I know for a lot of folks in that age bracket and just in general, it's been a really tough year. Folks were pretty isolated, and this program was very much related to building skills of how to better cope with the pandemic as well, which was interesting. Ideally, the group or the class for the SMART program meets about 2 hours per week, once a week. Can be conducted in person or virtually. I know with the pandemic, it's been completely virtual so far. And folks receive a book, a manual that they have just to kind of go over what the class is going through, the different exercises. I think I actually have what it looks like here. If folks are interested in looking at it, you get like a class manual that looks like this, that you get to keep, and it goes over a bunch of the relaxation exercises and whatnot. So it's pretty nice. The Benson Henry Institute at Mass General also offers the Mind Body Program for Healthy Aging, which is led by my mentor Laura Malloy, and she's really excellent. So it's been around for a long time, and it's very much empirically validated. The SMART program's been studied in multiple research studies at Mass General and other institutions to share and show how it can be helpful for the population. I know for just on the top of my head, this program with mind body medicine helps folks reduce blood pressure, anxiety, depressive symptoms, overeating. So we go over diet and exercise, insomnia, and so forth. So it's really interesting to see. So for folks too who have other chronic illnesses, and know for folks with epilepsy, other folks with like chronic pain, fibromyalgia, it's definitely an interesting course to think about, or even think about mind body medicine techniques, because it gives you almost like this sense of control over how you react to stressors that kind of just happen in life that we don't predict. So with going along about that, there's this really neat visual in front of me, a lot of circles, so I hope you guys can understand it a little bit. This is basically the outline of what stress management resiliency training is. For folks who don't know what resiliency means, basically resiliency is the ability to bounce back or feel more like yourself after a stressor or a trauma. Meaning for some folks, and this is really common, like when we go through chronic stress or something unexpected in life that's unpleasant, for some folks, we tend to not want to get out of bed. We don't feel like ourselves. We socially isolate. We feel down. Our self care is affected. But with building resiliency, you tend to return to that a little bit faster, meaning when you're going through a tough time, you might be able to return back to your self care practices a little faster. You might be able to make meaning out of a negative event and kind of see it in a more positive way to the best of your ability. So again, resiliency is just the ability to, when you're going through a trauma, adversity, a stressor, the ability to bounce back to yourself in a faster time frame. So how can you achieve resiliency over time? On the left of your screen, there are 3 circles here. At the top, mentions relaxation response techniques. That's what RR stands for. And that includes like the meditations, breathing exercises, muscle relaxation exercises, and a couple of those that we'll do today. So to get to resiliency or to cultivate resiliency, these tangible relaxation techniques can be really helpful for that. Another circle down here is just building general awareness of yourself. If you start to feel curious about yourself, meaning if you start to raise awareness of your negative thoughts, something we do go over in the SMART program, and maybe for folks who've tried CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy before, there's this element of thought labeling, meaning actually labeling and raising awareness of certain thoughts that we have and pointing them out and saying to ourselves, wow, like I think I catastrophize more than I thought, or I think I have these negative thoughts during this certain situation, X, Y, and Z. So it's basically just building awareness of your thoughts. It's also about building awareness of what your stress response looks like and your relaxation response looks like. Meaning that when we're feeling triggered by stress, how does it feel in your body? What are your stress warning signals? For some people, it's feeling maybe muscle tension, maybe it's feeling hot flashes, shortness of breath. I can go on and on. I'm sure a lot of folks can identify with those as well. Insomnia. But the idea here is not just raising awareness of your stress symptoms, it's also about raising awareness of what your relaxation response looks like. And I guarantee you, if I went out in public and asked folks, what does relaxation feel like specifically, I usually get the answer, well, it feels relaxing. Or if some folks say, I have no idea. We tend to focus a lot more on the stress response and how we feel when we're anxious because it's so unpleasant versus when we feel relaxed, we don't really pay attention to it as much as we should, right? Because the stress kind of trumps over the relaxation. So, this course in mind body medicine helps us answer the question, what does stress feel like for me? And also, what does relaxation look like for me? And once you build awareness of those two kind of bodily systems within yourself, then you're over time, ideally, you're able to kind of turn on that stress and relaxation response on and off like a switch, which is pretty neat. To go in a little bit more detail, I don't want to get too scientific here, but just for folks who are interested, and every living human, like every single living creature, and especially human beings, we have two systems in our bodies. One is called the sympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for our stress response. That includes different types of hormones and neurotransmitters like cortisol, where our bodies do feel stressed. Like we have our heart pitter pattering, we have muscle tension, dryness in the mouth, etc. That's our stress response. And then there's the relaxation response, which is our parasympathetic nervous system, which is known as rest and digest, which means maybe the muscles are relaxing. You might be feeling hungry. You might also feel like you are more lightweight. You might feel like your breath rate is slowing down. So that's the two systems. So the idea behind mind body medicine, once again, is having you over time practice this ability to gain more control over your stress response and your relaxation response, those two systems in your body. And there's a ton of research that shows that when we learn these certain techniques, we can really kind of trigger these responses, which is really cool. And it's brought me into this field. It's very fascinating. And then lastly, with resiliency, learning adaptive strategies, again, that kind of relates to making some good decisions about how you react to stress. Instead of, I know for some folks, when they're stressed, they overeat or they lash out at people. Being more aware of that, and with the SMART program and learning mindfulness, instead of doing that, you might say to yourself, you know what, I'm feeling kind of angry. I have like muscle tension. I want to eat something when I'm not hungry. It's time for me to do some mindfulness right now, and then kind of see how you feel after. And then if you choose to do these different techniques and coping skills on the right side of the screen, you see other bubbles here. If you choose to do the coping skills, it promotes adaptation and growth in your life. As I mentioned, like increases self-awareness and self-regulation. It reduces oxidative stress and increase antioxidants. That's more of like the physiological effects of resiliency that's positive. I just want to put that out there because again, mind body connection, really incredible. So this is just a review of what I just spoke about, but just in more detail. Oh, whoops, let me go back there. Which is more about raising awareness of how our thoughts, emotions, physical symptoms relate to each other. And here on the screen, you might see here that there's physical manifestations of stress, emotions and feelings, and also these negative automatic thoughts. And for example, I'll just walk you guys through it really quickly. Let's say if you're triggered by something stressful does happen to you, you might feel a headache, racing mind, fatigue, insomnia, stress, eating, poor concentration. As mentioned, that is totally your sympathetic nervous system. That is your fight or flight response going to full gear in your body. But let's say if you have a headache or maybe your muscles are in pain, you might feel maybe some emotions attached to that. You might feel like angry, like this is unfair. Why is this happening to me? Maybe some sadness, grief, meaning it's hard to accept things out of your control, or maybe noticing a loss of something if you go through these symptoms. And a lot of folks too who I worked with with chronic illness, folks who also have been through quite a bit in their lives, sometimes when they feel their stress response, it's not unheard of to feel guilt about it as well. Like some folks feel guilty and say, oh, I really, there's something wrong with me. Like, why am I feeling this way? I shouldn't feel this way. And those are all of the negative emotions associated with the physical symptoms. Let's take it a step further. Maybe you're feeling angry, you have a headache, you're noticing your stress response. You might have some negative automatic thoughts there as well. For some, I know there's some examples on here, but I'm going to make up my own. If you were to feel maybe stressed out, you might say to yourself, well, I'm never going to get better, or this is never going to end, or I know so and so is mad at me, etc. And these are all negative automatic thoughts that came from how you're feeling. And I just want to clarify that there's no order to what influences what. You can have a negative automatic thought that influences your emotions and your physical symptoms. You can have an emotion that affects your thoughts and physical symptoms, or you can have a physical symptom that affects your thoughts and emotions, etc. There's so many combinations. So I just wanted to share this slide because it just reiterates how these are all intertwined, hence the name mind body medicine. There are thoughts and emotions that can affect our bodies, and our bodies can affect our thoughts and emotions as well. So I just want to share that with you guys in more detail. So we just talked about this. So I'm going to skip over. All right. So with mindfulness, going back to, okay, how can I learn a mindfulness practice? And this is kind of like the information I like to share with my workshops and my classes, just for you to take away for today. So for mindfulness, just again, we talked about how it's the act of feeling present, the act of not maybe ruminating about the past or worrying about something unknown in the future. But there's other components to mindfulness as well. It's also a way for us to teach our minds to respond to the daily worries of life from a perspective of compassion, non judgment, and acceptance. So, what does that mean? So, again, mindfulness, you can also see it as like an umbrella term, and the compassion, non judgment, and acceptance, like the rungs off the umbrella, with the presence as well, feeling present. So, enable for you to be mindful and present, a nice component of that is self compassion and compassion towards others, meaning anytime you give yourself the permission to, again, you guys, some of you guys came to this workshop, you gave yourself the permission to do that, to learn some techniques. And for folks who attend my class, the SMART program, they gave themselves permission to attend it to learn coping skills. That's just something to recognize, raising awareness of that self-compassion, because you guys are the ones ultimately making that decision. And also wanted to add a little bit more to self-compassion. There's also, for a lot of my classes and patients of mine, there's a misconception that self-compassion is the same thing as being selfish. I want to say that is not true. There are two variations of each other. Self-compassion is an interesting thought because not only is it about giving permission for you to heal and to do self-care and to learn how to react to stress in a more positive way, but when you think about it, when we give ourselves self-compassion, we don't forget about ourselves. In turn, we tend to be able to have more capacity to support others and share compassion towards others. I like to use the example of when you're on an airplane, when something happens, like those oxygen masks fall from the ceiling, right? And what you have to do is put the oxygen mask on first in order to help others. And that's the same idea with self compassion. You're ideally supposed to take care of yourself as best as you can first, put yourself first a little bit with your self care. And when you do that, you don't feel as burnt out. And when you're not as burnt out, you're able to help others. So that's the idea of self compassion. Non judgment, meaning kind of going back to what I mentioned before, with those negative automatic thoughts, like the would have, could have, should have thoughts, would have thoughts. When we really boil it down, those negative thoughts are really statements of judgment towards ourselves. Meaning that we might have this inner voice of ours that can come across as maybe a little bit, not the nicest or judgmental. Like, oh, you should have done this, you could have done that. And again, sometimes those thoughts are helpful to learn from the past and to better maybe your next goal. But if they're happening too much, it just becomes judgment towards yourself and it can make us feel pretty crummy. So mindfulness really helps us raise awareness of those judgmental negative thoughts and kind of learn some new ways of how to change the language of your inner dialogue in your mind. And for some folks, that happens during a meditation, which is really interesting. And lastly, I would say the most abstract and maybe even like relatable component of mindfulness is this ability to achieve acceptance. And what acceptance means is acceptance of events out of one's control. I know with the pandemic, this comes up quite often with my classes and with my patients, because obviously it's something that happened that none of us on an individual level controlled what happened. But not just that, I know for folks, again, with different diagnoses, those who relate to being a caregiver, there's a lot of things in life that are out of our control. And if you find yourself ruminating about it, noticing if you were to do a meditation, an exercise that we'll do together today, reflect and say, you know what? I wasn't able to control this, but I think I can think of some ways of how I can control how I react to it. So the kind of like the big takeaway I like to share with folks is that when you acknowledge that there's something that you can't control, that's what acceptance is all about. And once you acknowledge it, reflecting the second question, saying to yourself, well, okay, but what can I do right now? What can I do today? I could do a meditation. I can call a friend. I can do self-care, etc. That's where mindfulness kind of helps people realize that. And it can be really empowering. I know for a lot of folks I've worked with. And basically, with the meditations itself for mindfulness, it's a well documented practice that helps folks enjoy the present moment rather than worrying about past and future, as I mentioned the last few times. So let's continue on. So this is a visual used in the SMART program as well that reiterates what I'm talking about here. Health is like a three-legged stool. So if you guys see on the screen right here, there's a very interesting looking stool. The stool here says overall health, and that means like physical health, mental health, like diet, exercise, medication, adherence, etc. Like that's just like overall health is basically you as a person. And then here on the left, you see these two larger legs, like pharmaceuticals and surgery. So traditional medicine, back in the day, not even that recently. I mean, maybe it was more recently than I thought. Like I think maybe in the last like 30, 20-ish years, maybe in the last 15 years, a lot of traditional medicine was very much focused on like medication, surgery, and that's it. Like, you got your medication, got your surgery, no follow-up, you're good to go. However, over time, through especially the studies at Mass General and a bunch of different institutions, like the Brigham, I know at I believe Dana-Farber, Johns Hopkins, etc. Lots of institutions have realized that pharmaceuticals, medications, and surgery isn't enough for folks to feel better and isn't enough for folks to recoup. At the end here on the right side is this tiny leg that says self-care, meaning like doing mindfulness meditation, giving time for yourself through self-compassion, social support. Like if you, so basically the image here is showing that, you can have your pharmaceuticals, you can have your surgeries, but if you don't have follow-up with the mental health or the self-care, the school is going to be lopsided and not like the best like situation. So here it just shows that there's a very large need of self-care to complement medications and to complement the surgeries that folks are going through. It doesn't replace it in a lot of instances, it does for some, but for majority doesn't. But it's an excellent complement to it. And for folks who practice meditation, practice mindfulness in everyday life, folks who attended the SMART program and similar programs, studies have shown that for some people, they do tend to have like a higher ability to feel optimistic about their diagnosis. And in turn, some folks tend to heal a little bit faster. For folks who feel really anxious and stressed out with those hormones I talked about earlier, like the cortisol, I know for some folks it's like epinephrine, which is another chemical responsible for stress. When we have too many of those chemicals in our bodies, it can cause inflammation and really hinder maybe some of the medical progress you've made. So long story short, self-care, relaxation, coping skills, super important to overall health, and that you can't just disregard it and just stick with like medications and surgeries. So that's what that looks like here. Just a little bit more information before we do our exercises for today. Just a few terms I like to share with folks before they leave. There's two kind of fancier terms on the screen. The first one here is allostasis, which is basically our body's way of how it adapts to stress. Using those two systems I talked about, the stress response and the relaxation response, we kind of like turn on and off to try and keep our body at some sort of like equilibrium. But then sometimes if we're not able to handle the stress, it's too much on the one side, and then it can make us feel pretty sick and pretty crummy. Allostatic loading is basically, I like to call it, if you are somebody who relates to feeling like there's a snowball effect of stress. So it's basically repeated cycles of this allostasis where your body's really, really stressed out. Let's say you're going through financial stress, medical stress, pandemic stress, relational stress. I mean, I know a lot of folks who go through different stressors in their lives. Basically, when there's different separate stressors in your lives or even past ones like traumas, they all kind of overlap with each other. That's an allostatic load, and that really kind of causes people to feel burnt out. And it really, when your body's trying to manage all this stress, is trying to put in the relaxation response in there to get that allostasis, you're going to get like a wear and tear, because when we're feeling anxious, when we feel that stress response, our body's actually using a lot of resources. So I hear from folks quite often when they're going through anxiety, long term or short term, and they say, wow, I'm exhausted. And I share with them, yeah, I'm not surprised. Your body and your mind are going through quite a lot to reach an allostatic, or reaching like an allostasis or an equilibrium. So anyway, this idea of the snowball effect of stress over time, this disturbed daily rhythm of functioning can lead to, and a lot of research shows, leads to higher chances of obesity, atherosclerosis, impaired immunity. Also, like, for some folks, heart disease, mismanagement of diabetes. So when you are going through a ton of stress and don't really have coping skills at your disposal, you might be at risk for experiencing this. And maybe some folks have already. Anxiety and depression too are a really big part of allostatic loading or feeling pretty overwhelmed. The good news is that it is reversible. It is reversible through the coping skills. So if you're someone who says to themselves, I've already been through allostatic load, or I'm going through that right now, there is hope. You can reverse the effects by practicing the different coping skills. And these are, again, very fancy slides, but I just want to reiterate really quickly about what these mean. Something we talk in the SMART program too is about these two systems of how we deal with stress. There's top down, which means parts of our brain, as you see on the screen here, like our prefrontal cortex, and so forth, versus bottom up, which is more of our like primitive part of our brains, like our hypothalamus or amygdala. These are just two ways of how we cope. So just to give you guys just a take home message here, bottom up processing of stress is very much your very first reaction to stress. And that could include feeling irritable, muscle tension, yelling at someone you didn't mean to. Basically, bottom up is like your primitive way of dealing with stress. It might not be the most helpful. Top down dealing with stress is when you're using your prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for decision making. It's responsible for basically our personalities. Top down means is when we say to ourselves, well, you know what, I yelled at someone today. It wasn't cool because I was stressed. I think I'm going to do a meditation. I'm going to make a choice to go for a walk today. I'm going to make a choice to reach out for social support. So long story short, top down processing for stress is more advantageous because you're kind of thinking about, okay, like what caused my stress? What can I do to help myself feel like I have control over it? Versus the bottom up where you do something really impulsively and you say, oh my gosh, where did that come from? I think the majority of us does relate to the bottom up processing, and that's fine. But again, like through some of the techniques that I'll go over with you guys today and what is more explained in the SMART program, you learn other ways to have more of that top down processing where you have more control over how you respond to something. So that's basically all I wanted to share. I know there's a lot of fancy terms on here for like, I think providers and physicians, but we'll skip over those. Right? So here that kind of reiterates what I just mentioned. Judgmental is bottom up, empathetic is top down. Just I guess I'll go over a little bit more information about it. For feeling more cognitively resilient, it requires cognitive flexibility to understand intentions, desires, beliefs of another person. And that's basically what empathy is. Being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, and you can might feel a little bit better and less reactive in that circumstance, and also just kind of thinking about your own reaction to stress as well. Kind of going back to building awareness of your stress and relaxation response like a few slides ago. All right, so I mean, I kind of went over this a little bit, but just a little bit more detail about the science behind your stress response for folks who are nerds like myself. Our stress response is not only just our sympathetic nervous system, but it's also related to parts of our brain. This is also why I'm in the mind body medicine field, because I think it's absolutely incredible how different exercises and mindfulness practices over time can actually influence our brain structure and functioning. There are studies done where folks who short term meditate have a higher concentration of certain parts of their brains that are responsible for memory and also for emotional regulation, which is really good, meaning that when you meditate, do something that's mindful, self care, anything that I mentioned to you guys in the last part of this presentation, it basically just helps your brain. It's just incredible. So I want to share that with you guys. But basically, when you're going through stress, you're part of your brain responsible for feeling maybe a little bit more on edge or feeling emotional or even impulsive. That's your amygdala. It's all about the emotions there. And hippocampus is responsible for your memory. For a lot of folks, when we're feeling anxious or stressed out, we usually forget where we put our keys. We forget a lot of things. I mean, I have a lot of clients who have some memory issues because of all the stress they're going through. So with the SMART program and some of these meditations and these other quick techniques, it can be helpful in over time reducing some of those side effects. And it's just incredible to think that it is reversible. And something I didn't add before too with these exercises is mindfulness techniques and coping skills. I like to compare them to going to the gym for your mind. I know for some folks they do in-home exercises, they go for walks, which is excellent for your health. But when it comes to meditation, mindfulness practices, breathing techniques, learning ways of how to challenge your negative thoughts, that's equal to going to the gym for your mind. Like you're exercising a part of your brain to better deal with stress while you're doing something that might be more physical. So it really complements each other. So that's why I want to share with you guys in this slide. So let's move along here. All right, so this is again just raising awareness for today, like of what your stress response might look like. I'm hoping you guys at the end of this workshop might have a heightened awareness of maybe what your stress signals look like for you. And I believe everyone's so different with that. For some folks, they feel muscle tension, jaws clenching, ready for action, jitteriness. You might feel maybe more sweaty. You might feel maybe your oxygen is hard to breathe, high heart rate, stomach issues. The list goes on and on. Memory lapses, feeling more irritable towards others, etc. So I think this might be a good idea to think about what the breath does to reverse these stress signals that I just went over with you guys. So just to put out there before we do some of the techniques, we'll probably do them in the last 15 or so minutes of today. Okay, we talked a lot about what stress looks like. Okay, Hannah, what does relaxation look like for me and how can I cultivate that after this 1 hour workshop? My first two suggestions for you guys, and hopefully this makes sense when we do the exercises. Right off the bat, I'm not a fan of saying deep breathing. I think there's a misconception that the deeper you breathe, the more relaxed you feel. The reason why is that I've had certain folks say to me, oh my gosh, I hate meditation. I'm not into mindfulness because I breathe so deeply. I feel lightheaded, feels uncomfortable. I tell them, nope, we don't want you to, we don't want you to hyperventilate. We don't want you to breathe too deeply. It's not about breathing deeply. It's actually just about slowing your breathing rate down. A lot of studies have shown that when you consciously make an effort to slow your breath down a little bit, not too much, but you take a moment just to take a breath. The first step is to breathe, taking a nice slow inhale and exhale. You're automatically triggering your relaxation response in your body. Again, when you're taking a slower inhale and exhale, not deep, but just slow your breathing rate down consciously, you're triggering that parasympathetic nervous system right away. And it takes a few times to practice that, but I just want to put that out there. And I just want to go forward here as well. And when it comes to the relaxation response, if you slow your breath down, you might notice your heart rate is slowing down. When you slow your breath down, you might notice your thoughts are slowing down. Basically, when you are breathing more slowly, a lot of things start to slow down in a really healthy way if you feel like the world around you is kind of spinning and you feel like you're overwhelmed. It just kind of, and here's like kind of the reward of what that feels like. You might feel some positivity, feeling more good to be around. It restores your mind body balance again, like kind of quiets those negative thoughts. I know for some folks, when they do a meditation and breathe more slowly with the exercises, they might notice less muscle tension, less perception of pain. and also helps folks fall asleep faster as well for insomnia. If you're somebody who has difficulty falling or staying asleep, doing these breathing techniques more slowly can help you doze off a little bit faster because you're triggering that relaxation response. All right. So I know I mentioned that going to practicing meditation and mindfulness is like going to the gym for your mind. But I want to point out here really quickly the misconceptions of meditation and what it is in the eyes of mindfulness. I will say what makes mindfulness meditation more popular is that it is a lot more friendly versus other meditation practices that are more strict. Basically, meditation, it's not about wiping your mind clean. It's not about not having thoughts and not thinking about anything. It's actually the opposite. In the mindfulness practice, it's actually more about sitting with your thoughts and narrating your experience. When you're narrating your experience in the moment through your five senses. So, for example, if you say to yourself, like, what am I touching? What am I smelling? What am I hearing? What am I tasting, etc.? When you're noticing your five senses and narrating it to yourself in the moment, when you meditate, or even like if you go for a walk or if you are outside, like taking a few extra moments to notice the birds singing, to smell the flowers, to see the blue sky, especially with spring kind of coming forth. That's a really mindful time of year. So anytime you notice and narrate your five senses to yourself, you're going to notice feeling more in a meditative state and feeling more present. So the takeaway here for the cheats for today, the slower your breathing rate is, and when you narrate or notice your five senses, or even just a couple of them, or hyper focus on one sense, you're practicing mindfulness already. And you can do that in everyday life. So that's basically what this is sharing here. And then for the meditation description, like what exactly is a meditation? It's not thinking, it's just awareness and experience. Again, through your five senses, noticing what's around you without judgment and like with a curiosity. I had a client in my last a couple of classes ago on my other SMART program who said to me, she said on the side, she said, oh my gosh, like the SMART program, stress management resiliency, and the mindfulness exercise, like it made me feel like I'm almost like a private investigator of myself, meaning being curious about myself, feeling more aware of what your stress or relaxation response looks like. And I just love sharing that with all my other classes and workshops because I think it's so true. Meditation through mindfulness, it's really just about being a private investigator or PI of yourself and just being curious about it. And when you're more curious about how you react to stress and curious about your surroundings in the present, the less judgmental you are and the less negative thoughts you might have because you're stating what is, right? So yeah, that's pretty much what I want to go over in this slide here really quickly because this is actually the reason why I am in this field and it blew my mind back in college years and years ago. And I just love sharing with everybody and I hope people get as excited about it as I am. And when it comes to this research, it's telomeres is a part of your DNA strand. So in our bodies, molecularly, there's these DNA strands that look like a double helix. They kind of, and they're formed by these structures that look like this, like little Y's and X's. They're just funny shapes. So your DNA has those shapes. At the end of each strand of DNA is a little cap, basically just protects the DNA. It's called a telomere. Over time, like as we age, naturally the telomeres, the caps of the strands of your DNA, like a little hat that the DNA wears, naturally as we age, they tend to get thinner and thinner and there's less protection. And that's just the process of aging. And it's normal. However, if we're going through chronic stress, it it actually very much speeds up that process. I think for some folks, they might hear the term, oh my gosh, that stress really aged someone. On a molecular and physiological way, it does. It actually does. Stress does age people quickly because of these telomeres on the DNA strand kind of like disappearing or becoming weaker. So long story short, there's a lot of research, and I worked with one of the researchers at Penn State University that shared that if you were to meditate or do mindfulness or use the coping skills that I shared with you guys a little bit, resiliency, challenging negative thought, the idea here is you can actually reverse the telomere damage over time. It's not going to make you like become younger. We're not going to reverse the aging process. Of course, that would be a little bit too unrealistic. But it does help kind of repair that damage in the DNA, and it can help you not face maybe more symptoms of chronic illness, can help you feel a bit more better with your diagnoses. It's just incredible. Yeah, when you avoid rumination, when you avoid suppressing your negative thoughts, when you set self-care goals, make time for yourself, you don't feel stressed out, it definitely can be helpful to reverse it. So with that said, I know for some folks, they're eager to learn the exercises. I believe that was all that I had for the research here. So let's practice. I know we got about 15 or so minutes left. For some people, it might be a review. For some folks, it's new. I'm going to teach you guys something called mini meditations that we like to go over in the SMART program that you can totally do in everyday life, and you can sprinkle them throughout your day. Any of these exercises go along with reducing the stress response, as I talked about, and promotes resiliency as well. So for folks who like to do it, feel free to do it with me. For folks who just want to watch me, that's also totally fine. So the first exercise we're going to do today is called a single pointed focus meditation. And basically, it's a really, really quick meditation that can be like, probably from a minute to 2 minutes long or even longer. You can make it as short or as long as you want. I know some folks like to do it for like 10, 15 minutes. And basically, it has like a longer name, but in short, the single point focus meditation is basically an exercise where you choose a two-worded sentence or two-syllable phrase. I like to use the example, just this, meaning just this moment. And all you do, and I'll do an example, all you do is as you inhale, so as you breathe in, you would say silently to yourself or out loud, just. On the exhale, you would say this. And then just repeat as necessary. As you breathe in, you'll say just. Exhale this. For folks who might be familiar with mantras, this is very similar to a mantra, which is like repeating a word or a phrase to yourself. However, this is a little different because not only are you doing that, but you're adding the breath as well. So I thought maybe I'll add a little timer for about a minute and a half on my phone. Give that a try for folks who want to give it a try, and we'll move on to the next mini meditation. So I'm going to set a little timer on my phone here for folks who like to do it. Feel free to be nice and comfortable in your seated position. You can lie down wherever you are. And then you can either start to close your eyes or you can have your eyes open, whatever is safe for you. And all we're going to do is as you breathe in, you'll say to yourself, just exhale this, letting go. Inhale, just. Exhale this. Inhale, just. Exhale this. Just this. Just this. Just this. Exhale. Just inhale. Exhale out this. Just this. Just this. One more time, inhaling just. Exhale this, letting go. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes or turn your gaze. So that was a minute and a half. That was a mini meditation. So I know that I'm here doing a guided workshop today. So feel free to reflect on how that was for you. To move on, we'll try our second mini meditation. It's known as a starfish breathing exercise. Why it's called that, it's very similar to the single pointed focus, except we use our hands. So for folks who are visual people, this exercise might be more for you. Basically, it's called a starfish breathing technique because when you spread your fingers apart, you have your hand out like this. Your hand loosely resembles a starfish kind of shape. So all we do to kind of help slow ourselves down, our thoughts and breath down, is that we trace the finger. As you move up a finger, you inhale. As you move down, you exhale. As you move up, you inhale. As you move down, you exhale. It's really helpful because not only are you breathing more slowly during this exercise, but you're using some of those five senses that I talked about, sight and touch. So it's like a double whammy to help you feel more present. So for folks who like to give it a try, I will give you guys a demo of it. I might go faster or slower than you, and that's okay. Go at your own pace, but I challenge you to just slow yourself down a little bit. The slower you go, the more you get out of it. So let's get started. So as you move up a thumb, you breathe in. Moving down, exhale out. Moving up the index finger, breathing in. Down, exhale out. Breathing in, moving up the middle finger. Exhale down and out, letting go. Moving up the ring finger, breathing in. Down, exhale out, letting go. Moving up the pinky, breathing in. Down and out, letting go. And we'll do the same thing from the pinky to the thumb. So moving up the pinky, breathing in, noticing your chest rising. Exhale, chest falling, moving down. Moving up the ring finger, breathing in, noticing the sensation of your skin moving up. Exhale, moving down. Moving up the middle finger, breathing in. Exhale out. Letting go. Moving up the index finger, breathing in, looking at your hand, noticing the skin tone. Exhale out. Letting go. Moving up the thumb, breathing in. Exhale out. Letting go. So that exercise is also pretty customizable. You can do this anywhere at any time, however long or short as you like. If you feel triggered with stress, this is a good way to kind of calm yourself down. You can trace your fingers and breathe like this, just like we did today. Or if it's more quiet or maybe more discreet, you can have your hand flat on a surface like a leg or on a desk, and you can trace it flat on a surface where no one needs to know that you're doing a meditation, but it's your own little secret to feel better. So that's the starfish breathing technique. We're going to do two more really quick mini meditations and then wrap up for today. Just give you guys a little snapshot of what SMART is and what mind body medicine is. The next mini meditation is called a progressive muscle relaxation exercise. And basically all that is when you tense up a muscle, you inhale. As you exhale, you kind of relax your muscles. Some folks tend to like this one because as you inhale, you become a little bit more familiar with what muscle tension feels like and you have control over it. And when you exhale, when you relax your muscles, you feel more of a release. And I know for some folks, they tend to really like that. I'll do one of my favorite progressive muscle relaxation exercises. I'd like to call it an imaginary barbell. Feel free to do it if you like, or you can just watch. Basically, what you do is that you extend your arms out in front of yourself, almost like you're carrying an invisible barbell. As you inhale, you pull up your arms, make a fist, you breathe in, not too tight though, but making a little fist, inhaling. Exhale, you drop the arms and let the fingers go. And just repeating as necessary, breathing in, making a fist, noticing that tension. Exhale, letting it go. Again, breathing in, making a fist with your hands, noticing that tension. You can imagine any stressors in the palm of your hands. Exhale, letting go of those stressors. You can imagine letting go of any stress or negative thought. If you're a visual person, breathing in, making a fist. And then exhale again. Letting it go, noticing gravity, noticing that release. One more time, breathing in, making a fist. Exhale, letting the hands go. So that's progressive muscle relaxation. I know for folks who say to me, I'm a fidgety person, I like to move around, this breathing technique is really nice because you are moving around. Relaxation does not necessarily mean you have to sit still all the time. So that's just an example of that. And let's try one more. So now we have like 2 or 3 minutes left. This is called diaphragmatic breathing, which means belly breathing. All you do is if you want to close your eyes, put one hand over your heart, one over your belly button, in this position, which can be comforting. And all you do is as you breathe in and out, exhale, you just focus on the movement of your stomach, pushing up your hand. Exhale down, your hand moves downward. Breathing in, hand is moving up with the stomach. Exhale, hand is moving down. Breathing in, hand is moving up with the stomach. Exhale, hand is moving down. Breathing in, hand is moving up with the stomach. Exhale, hand is moving down. One more time. Breathing in, hand is moving up with the stomach expanding. Exhale, hand is falling down. For some people, folks like to have that exercise because the rhythmic motion of the hand moving up and down with the stomach can be comforting. And with the heartbeat, it's kind of like a nice feedback. As you breathe and the longer you do this exercise, you might notice your heartbeat changing over time. You could also do this exercise lying down if it's easier to see your stomach rising and falling if you need that visual cue. So those are all of the mini meditations I wanted to give you guys for today. And here's also a list of resources. I'm happy to send the foundation for folks if you're interested in like downloading different apps. And I recommend 10% Happier, Beautify, Insight Timer, Headspace. But if folks would like resources, I'm happy to just copy and paste this to the organizers of this talk. And if you want to screenshot this, I know this is being taped as well, so feel free to refer back to this for resources. Otherwise, this is my contact information. If folks have questions about upcoming classes, about what we learned today, if you would like resources, this is my website, my phone number, and also my email, themindshrine.com or themindshrine@yahoo.com. If folks do have questions or thoughts about how to begin a practice or anything like that. I know we're out of time. I'll stop screen sharing in just a moment. I just want to say again, thank you so much for the Epilepsy Foundation to have me today. I hope you guys feel a little bit more relaxed after this talk. And I also hope you guys do some self-care today as well. And I'm very grateful to be here. So I really thank you guys so much. So thank you. And I'll stop screen sharing now. So yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hannah. I think, so many of the tips and science that you talked about is so relevant today as so many of us are still at home and still experiencing, maybe new triggers of stress. So hopefully some of these tips can certainly help lead us to a less stressful time right now. And you shared your website there as well. So there's some tips on there and some other ways to get in touch with you. So thank you so much for your time today and for joining us.
Great. Thank you guys again. And again, if you guys have questions or thoughts, it's www.themindshrine.com. But thank you so much. And I hope you guys have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, Hannah. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.